5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Firearm on him as he was reaching for his registration and his license, which is in his back pocket. The gun was in his way and he wasn't able to get to his license and registration. And the officer, already with his gun blazing, cocked and everything, don't move, and took off. And that was it. He shot and hopefully not killed my boyfriend without proper protocol.
Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out! Don't move! Fuck! 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 Don't move! Don't move! Don't move! Code 3! Get the baby out of here!
4 days prior to Philando's final police stop, and 1.6 miles and 2 minutes away from Fry Street and Larpenteur Avenue, where Philando was murdered, there was an armed robbery at a Super USA convenience store located at 2424 Larpenteur Avenue. The suspects involved were 2 black males, both with tall, slim builds and long braided or locked hair. It was this robbery that Officer Yanez says he believed Philando to be a suspect in, and with a bolo order against him. Now, I can respect and understand Officer Yanez's desire to weed out criminal elements within the black community in which he served. However, the officer made his assumption without observing Philando's physical features outside of the vehicle, or even in basic sufficient outdoor lighting. Given it was 9 p.m. at night and Officer Yanez was observing Philando from inside his own patrol car traveling behind Philando's 1997 Oldsmobile. Furthermore, beyond these small facts, what's more disturbing is the reason he gave to the dispatcher for the eventual stop. Officer Yanez said it was because of Philando's big Negro nose.
The driver looks more like one of our suspects just because of the wide set nose. I couldn't get a good look at the passenger. And I'll wait for you. I see you're just turning on the Larpenteur. We're at Larpenteur Fairview.
Another point I want you to listen to is the inflection in his voice when he says they just look like people who were involved in a robbery. He says it in a way that conveys the myth that they're black people, they had to have done something criminal. Listen closely to his tone and feel his meaning.
I'm gonna check the IDs. I have reason to pull it over. But the 2 occupants just look like people that were involved in a robbery. 2424. Just look like people that were involved in a robbery. Just look like people that were involved in a robbery.
The lighting was so bad, Officer Yanez didn't even realize there was a child in the back seat and a female in the passenger seat. Not only that, Officer Yanez admitted this fact.
The driver looks more like one of our suspects just because of the wide set nose. I couldn't get a good look at the passenger. I couldn't get a good look at the passenger. I couldn't get a good look at the passenger.
But he did make out that the driver had a passenger but couldn't tell if it was a male or female. This is what makes me question, how could he say he had a justified reason to pull them over simply based off the shape of Philando's nose, even though he couldn't even see the outline of an adult female next to him? However, from the video we could see Philando's driver's side tail light wasn't out. So why did Officer Yanez give this as a reason for him pulling over Philando in later interviews? Instead, he told dispatch he thought Philando was one of the store robbers because he had a big nose. It's the pre-criminalization of Philando by Officer Yanez that was the major contributing factor to his false assumption that Philando was about to shoot him simply for informing him he was carrying a licensed concealed weapon. Officer Yanez's assumption Philando was a criminal about to kill him because he carried a firearm, even though Yanez, a cop who works in a state where concealed carry is allowed and permits are carried by over 300,000 residents. The very thought that a black man could live long enough into adulthood without a criminal record, apply and receive a gun license to carry a firearm is foreign to a lot of people, especially in law enforcement, to this day. That ignorance, unfortunately, isn't isolated to Yanez. American society as a whole have negative stereotypes they associate with black people in all areas of human activity, which are economic, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. I guarantee you that you've heard numerous negative stereotypes associated with black people. These 9 areas of human activity cover all of daily human life, and when anyone is constantly fed these lies about a group of people on a consistent basis, it should come as no surprise that when a black unarmed person is killed by police, large segments of society and members of the jury pool still feels as if the murder is justified because that black person may not have been guilty at that particular moment, but they had to have done something. Therefore, the murder is justified by proxy. On July 8, 2016, 2 days after the murder of Philando Castile, County Attorney John Chow did a press conference discussing if Officer Yanez would be brought up on charges.
I, too, am disheartened by the tragic events that unfolded Wednesday night in our community. While we don't yet have all of the facts, we do know that the loss of Philando Castile is being mourned throughout our community. And I want to especially express my sincere and heartfelt condolences to his family, his friends, and school community at J.J. Hill Montessori. Priority. I have asked for a prompt and thorough investigation. Both of these goals are equally important to uphold. Once they have concluded their investigation, they will present the case to our office for prosecution review. It has long been the practice of this office to present such cases to a grand jury. I believe there are benefits to doing so. However, I will decide how best to proceed at a later time after additional thought and conversations with my senior leadership staff. The law remains the same. The use of deadly force is justified only when necessary to protect the officer or another from apparent death or great bodily harm. In order to bring criminal charges against a police officer for using deadly force in the line of duty, Minnesota law requires the state to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the use of force was not justified. If the grand jury determines that charges are warranted in this case, or this office makes that decision, I assure you that we will prosecute this case to the fullest extent of the law.
On July 29, 2016, Ramsey County Attorney John Chow held another press conference stating that the actions of Officer Yanez and the circumstances regarding the shooting called for a special prosecutor and that he is selecting Don Lewis. Special Prosecutor Lewis' responsibility from that point forward was to gather all relevant evidence surrounding the shooting and present it to the grand jury to determine if enough evidence existed to bring charges against Officer Yanez.
As an appointed special prosecutor, Don will be an integral member of our team who will review this case with me and be substantially involved in our decision to charge, decline, or present the BCA investigation to a Ramsey County grand jury. I'm honored that Don has accepted this important assignment and that he will work alongside me as we undertake this critical effort on behalf of our community. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Don Lewis to say a few words.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. I am a Ramsey County native. So is my wife. We both grew up in the Rondo area of St. Paul. My 3 children live here.
4 months later, on November 16, 2016, Ramsey County Attorney John Chow gave a third press conference on the case findings and whether to officially bring charges against Officer Yanez. Chow's ultimate decision was that it was not necessary to bring the case to a grand jury based off the prosecutor's findings, and that charges would indeed be filed against Officer Yanez for the murder of Philando Castile. Officer Yanez's first court date would be in 2 days after the press conference on November 18, 2016, Friday afternoon at 1:30 p.m.
Based upon our thorough and exhaustive review of the facts of this case, it is my conclusion that the use of deadly force by Officer Yanez was not justified, and that sufficient facts exist to prove this to be true. Accordingly, we filed a criminal complaint this morning in Ramsey County District Court charging Officer Yanez with second-degree manslaughter in the death of Philando Castile and 2 felony counts of dangerous discharge of a firearm that endangered the safety of Diamond Reynolds and her 4-year-old daughter, the 2 passengers in the car.
The St. Anthony police officer charged with manslaughter for shooting and killing Philando Castile made his first court appearance today. 28-year-old Jeronimo Yanez is pleading not guilty to allegations that he committed second-degree manslaughter when he pulled over and then shot Castile. Attorneys for Officer Yanez had little to say outside the courtroom today. Yanez did waive his right to a formal reading of the criminal complaint and his rights. Prosecutors did not object to the defendant being released without having to put up any kind of bail. After the hearing, some others scoffed at the idea of possibly moving this trial to another county.
Yes, he can get a fair trial. This is Minnesota. Minnesota's always been about fairness, and so is Ramsey County. So there's no doubt in my mind that the trial can be fair, but based on the facts, we want a conviction.
Family members of both Yanez and Castile declined comment today. Yanez's next court appearance is December 19th.
Even before the trial began, the nation was split into 2 camps. Those who believed the officer deserved to be acquitted, and those who felt he was guilty. However, within the camp of those who believed Officer Yanez was guilty, there were those who felt justice would not be delivered because of the number of police officers and civilians that were not convicted of murder when it pertained to the killing of unarmed innocent black people. We had the acquittal of Officer Darren Wilson, who shot and killed 17-year-old Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. In 2015, in Waller County, Texas, Sandra Bland was found dead in her jail cell after her arrest for a minor traffic stop without anyone being held responsible. Then the murder of Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on July 5, 2016, one day before the murder of Philando. In Alton's case, state or federal charges weren't even filed. It wasn't only people within law enforcement who were being acquitted of murdering black people, but also everyday citizens, like what happened in the case of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, who was murdered by neighborhood watch captain George Zimmerman in Sanford, Florida in 2012. Or the police officer killing of 12-year-old Tamir Rice in 2014 as he played in a public park alone, when Officer Timothy Loman got out of his patrol vehicle and immediately shot Tamir without verbalizing a single command to put down his toy gun. And this officer wasn't even brought up on charges. To say black people across the nation had very little faith in the judicial system when it came to punishing police and citizens for the killing of black people would be an understatement.
The former Cleveland police officer who fatally shot 12-year-old Tamir Rice now has a new job with a different police department. Timothy Loman was recently hired as a part-time officer with a small department in Southeast Ohio. Rice was playing with a pellet gun outside a recreation center in 2014 when Loman shot and killed him. A grand jury declined to indict the rookie officer. He was fired a year later. Loman's new police chief says he deserves a second chance. An attorney for the Rice family says Rice's mother believes Loman does not belong on any police force anywhere, period.
The first day of trial began on May 30th, 2017, nearly a year after the murder. Officer Yanez's charges included one count of second-degree manslaughter, which carries the maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. Yanez also faced 2 counts of dangerous discharge of a firearm for shooting into a vehicle 7 times with the child and passenger present less than 3 feet away.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We begin with the start of a trial here in Minnesota so significant it's being watched all around the world.
Officer Jeronimo Yanez facing charges in the shooting death of Philando Castile. It's day 1 and there's already wrangling over 2 very important issues.
KARE 11's Lou Raguse is live with what went on in court today. Lou?
This morning, 50 potential jurors crammed into this courtroom were sworn in and told that they could be seated at this case that's drawn international attention. And there was some legal wrangling over the evidence that they might be able to see.
He had a firearm and he was reaching for his wallet, and the officer just shot him in his arm.
In the Facebook live stream broadcasted as Philando Castile was dying, his girlfriend Diamond Reynolds said Castile had a legal permit to carry a firearm.
But he had a pistol on him because he's licensed to carry. And the officer told him don't move. And as he was putting his hands back up, the officer shot him in his arm about 4 or 5 times.
No comment. No comment.
But now, because of a motion made by Officer Jeronimo Yanez's attorneys, the jury may not be able to hear that information. They argued it was irrelevant that Castile had a permit to carry because Officer Yanez didn't know that when he fired. The judge will decide on Wednesday. According to the criminal complaint, Yanez pulled over Castile for a broken taillight because he wanted to see if Castile was a suspect in a recent armed gas station robbery. After Castile informed him he had a gun, Yanez said, "Don't reach for it," then shot Castile 7 times. Yanez says he thought Castile was pulling a gun out of his pocket.
You are under arrest. Sit down.
The case drew international attention to the treatment of black men by police officers. Of the 50 potential jurors who could be selected to hear the case, only 5 were black. Several others were non-white, but the majority appear Caucasian. The potential jurors filled out a questionnaire asking them where they get their news, whether they own firearms, and about their experience with law enforcement. The jury will begin to be narrowed down Wednesday morning. And the other major issue discussed this morning was marijuana, which is a major part of Officer Yanez's defense. His attorneys wanted to force Diamond Reynolds to reveal her dealer where she bought that marijuana on the day of the shooting, but the judge denied that request. They still can bring up marijuana use in the trial, though, in other ways. Guys, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Lou.
The first day of trial, Officer Yanez's defense attorney attempted to have the trial moved out of Ramsey County where he shot and killed Philando. However, Judge William Leahy rejected the request because the case had already received widespread publicity, so it wouldn't make much of a difference. Thousands of people across the country were already carrying out demonstrations, riots, marches, and protests. Hundreds of the protesters were even able to shut down and block the Minnesota I-94 expressway. News outlets, bloggers, content creators, and talk show hosts all had an opinion. Some people believe Officer Yanez was justified. Others felt he was guilty of murder. Those who knew Philando personally made statements, but one thing everyone wanted to know was, where was the NRA?
This story is interesting because there's something different. And that is, Philando Castile wasn't just a man shot at a traffic stop. He was a legal gun owner whose family was in the car and who had committed no crime at all. In a story of a man being shot because he was lawfully armed, you would think that one group, one powerful group in America, would say something about this. This is one group that you would expect to be losing their goddamn minds about this, the NRA. But for some strange reason, on this particular case, they've been completely silent. Completely silent. And yet, according to their rhetoric, this is everything that they stand against, right? An officer of the state depriving a citizen of his life because he was legally carrying a firearm? I mean, listen to how vocal and fired up the NRA gets when nothing has happened.
There is no greater freedom than the right to survive and protect our families with all the rifles, shotguns, and handguns we want.
Unless you're black, is what it should have said. Like, it's interesting how the people who define themselves by one fundamental American right, the right to bear arms, show that once race is involved, the only right that they believe in is their right to remain silent.
It appeared the NRA may simply had wanted to wait until the facts were gathered before jumping the gun. They wanted to be on the right side of history when all the dust settled. My guess is that the NRA are fully aware of who the majority of its members are, what they believe, and what and who they stand for. And it certainly isn't the gun rights of black people. The NRA's silence was not a waiting game for more information. It was a business decision, and they didn't want to upset their subscribers. The second motion presented on the first day of court, the defense attorney for Jeronimo Yanez wanted to stop the jury from hearing the fact that Philando was a concealed carry card holder. Yanez's defense attorney stated that if the jury was given knowledge that Philando did indeed have a concealed carry permit, then the defense would call into question its legality, because they claimed he may have applied for the permit while high on marijuana. This motion was struck down by the judge at the behest of the prosecution, who felt the jury had the right to know Philando was a legal card carrier, and the defense accusations of Philando being high on weed during his request for the permit was simply baseless speculation. The jury consisted of 15 people, 9 men and 6 women. 3 were alternates and would not deliberate at the end of the trial. Furthermore, the jurors were majority white, older, working-class people. The prosecution entered a number of evidence exhibits through Doug L. Hennings of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Exhibit 88, the shorts Philando was wearing when he was killed, sealed in a biohazard plastic bag. Exhibit 89, a new pair of the same shorts that could be handled in court. Exhibit 90, the holster in Philando's pocket, sealed in a biohazard bag. Exhibit 91, replica of Exhibit 90 that could be handled in court. Exhibit 92, Philando's wallet with driver's license and permit to carry, sealed in a biohazard plastic bag. Exhibit 86, a Diamondback FS 9mm gun secured to make it inoperable and sealed in a biohazard plastic bag. Exhibit 87A, a duplicate of Exhibit 86 that could be handled in court. Attorney Dusterhoff of the prosecution began his opening statement explaining that this trial was about a traffic stop, and having an oath and badge as a police officer came with great authority and responsibility. He then described the incidents leading up to the traffic stop. As the video of the traffic stop was prepped, Judge Leary warned people not to react to the video. But how could you not react to this?
Hello, sir. Good. How are you? Good. Reason I put you over, your brake lights are out, so you only have one activated active brake light, and that's going to be your passenger side one. Your third brake light, which is up here on top, and then this one back here, is going to be out. You have your license and insurance?
I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it then. Don't pull it out.
I'm not pulling it out.
Don't pull it out.
You just killed my boy. He wasn't reaching.
Don't pull it out!
He wasn't.
Don't move! Fuck!
Oh man, I can't
Fuck!
Oh my God. Oh my
Don't move!
Oh my
Don't
God.
move!
Oh my God, I'm shaking.
Don't move!
Don't move, baby.
Code 3! Get the baby girl out of here! Fuck! Don't move!
Babe, please.
Fuck! 6921, give up! Back here, code 3! Shots fired! Fuck!
Stay with me.
Medics, code 3!
We got pulled over for a busted tail light in the back.
The prosecution noted that Yanez didn't tell Philando to freeze or to put his hands up. Yanez's negligence led to the death of Philando. Yanez shot 7 times, with 5 shots hitting Philando. 2 of the bullets pierced his heart. 1 bullet went through Philando's car seat and landed right next to Diamond's daughter. Another bullet hit the armrest of the seat Diamond was sitting in. Philando's last words were, "I wasn't reaching for it." Officer Kaiser grabbed Diamond's daughter and ran from the car. The prosecution made sure to note that Yanez didn't tell Philando to freeze or to put his hands up. Next, it was Officer Jeronimo Yanez's defense team's turn to present their opening statement. Their focus was to introduce Yanez as a normal, everyday person who grew up in poverty to become someone who wanted to change the ills of society for the good guys. A family man who was loved and respected and harbored no ill feelings towards anyone or race of people. The defense claimed that the shooting had cost Yanez his name and stellar reputation amongst his fellow officers and community peers, and they intended on reclaiming it with facts and evidence. Both the defense and prosecution called many people and expert witnesses to present their side of the story. I focused on 6 of the most important. Diamond Reynolds, Philando's fiance, present when he was murdered. Officer Joseph Kaiser, Jeronimo Yanez's partner, also present during the shooting. And then Jeffrey Nobles, a use of force expert, Dr. Andrew Baker, who was the chief medical examiner. Christine Ingebretson is a toxicology professor for the University of Minnesota Pharmacy School. And finally, Officer Jeronimo Yanez, the murderer himself. Diamond Reynolds is the second witness called to the stand. Philando's fiance, who was present in the car with him during the shooting, and the individual solely responsible for the Facebook video from inside the car immediately after the shooting took place. Diamond's testimony began with her sharing with the jury information about herself and her life until the shooting. She told of the numerous times she was homeless and how the apartment her and Philando were living in was given to her by the shelter in the city. She mentioned that the neighborhood in Zone 6 where she resided was extremely dangerous, which was the main reason Philando acquired the firearm and a license to carry it in the first place. Robbery, auto theft, and murders were a common occurrence in the area. At one point, she was asked straight out if she or Philando harbored any anger or animosity towards police before the shooting, and she responded by saying that they didn't. In fact, they attended the community police picnic every summer in support of building a bridge between the community and police who worked in the area. The line of questioning moved into the day of the shooting, and it was at this point the trial ended for the day. Day 6 of the trial resumed where Day 5 left off, with Diamond taking the stand. The prosecution presented time cards for Diamond and Philando from their jobs on the day of July 6, 2016, as well as store receipts and surveillance camera footage to build a timeline throughout the day before the shooting took place. Diamond recounted how her and her sister met at her job. They took the bus to pick up her daughter Deanna from daycare and eventually met up with Philando, who had gone to get his hair braided after work. The four then drove to the grocery store because Diamond's sister agreed to buy them some groceries, with Philando staying in the car. They drove Diamond's sister home in Falcon Heights, and they were headed home when Philando was pulled over.
Y'all please pray for us, Jesus, please, y'all. I ask everybody on Facebook, everybody that's watching, everybody that's tuned in, please pray for us. Sister.